Let me start with a question. Have you ever looked in the mirror and felt that the person staring back wasn't entirely you? That behind your smile, your calm, your decency, something else was breathing, something quiet but alive, something watching. Most people never meet that part of themselves. They drown it with routine, comfort, and endless noise. They convince themselves they're good, moral, kind. But the truth is that inside every human being lives a silent creature, one that observes, manipulates, waits. We don't like to admit it, because the moment we do, the illusion of who we think we are begins to crack. This is where the darkness starts, not in violence or cruelty, but in self-deception. The belief that we are pure when we are not. The belief that our motives are honest when, in reality, everything we do hides an agenda: acceptance, control, love, validation, power. Whatever form it takes, it's still hunger wearing a mask of virtue. You see, the most dangerous evil is never loud. It whispers. It smiles. It tells you it's doing the right thing. History isn't built by monsters who announce themselves. It's built by polite faces who convince others they're saving the world, while quietly feeding their own appetites. Take a moment to imagine this. A man devotes his life to charity, spends his days helping the poor. The world calls him a saint. But late at night, when the lights are off, he scrolls through photos of his own work, admiring the praise, the likes, the worship. Does he really care about the poor, or does he care about being seen as the one who saves them? That's the difference between light and shadow. Both exist in the same room, but only one knows the other is there. What makes this dangerous is that self-deception always breeds control. Once you believe your intentions are pure, you stop questioning your actions. You can manipulate, lie, and destroy, but because you call it justice, you'll sleep like a child. That's how corruption wears beauty. It hides behind the mask of virtue and convinces you that you are righteous while you rot from within. The mind loves control. It loves being the hero of its own story, but in its hunger to appear good, it begins to rewrite truth. It edits out the shame, softens the guilt, and paints over every flaw with moral justification. That's why people rarely change. They don't see themselves as broken. They see themselves as misunderstood. And this blindness isn't weakness, it's strategy. The human mind lies to itself because it knows the truth would destroy its sense of identity. The truth is that goodness and evil are not separate forces. They're two sides of the same coin, and every time you flip it, you decide which face the world will see. But here's the secret. The people who understand their own darkness, who confront it, study it, even respect it, are the ones who cannot be easily corrupted. Because when you face the part of you that's capable of harm, it stops controlling you. You stop pretending. You become dangerous in the best way, honest. Think of the calm man who knows he could destroy you but doesn't. Think of the woman who can manipulate anyone but chooses not to. That's real power. Not denial, not pretense, awareness. The strength to hold your darker nature without letting it own you. The irony is, the more you repress your darkness, the more it controls you. The more you fear it, the more it grows. That's why the kindest people can sometimes become the cruelest when pushed too far. They've spent years pretending the shadow doesn't exist, until one day it erupts. There's a saying, the devil's greatest trick is convincing the world he doesn't exist. But I think the mind's greatest trick is convincing you that your devil is gone. It isn't. It's just waiting for the right weakness to return. We see this every day. The boss who humiliates his employees because he feels powerless at home. The lover who clings too tightly because they're afraid of being abandoned. The politician who preaches morality while living a double life. They all serve the same God, the hidden hunger inside. The world rewards masks. It doesn't care who you are, only how you appear. That's why corruption grows, not as an act of evil, but as an adaptation to survive. To climb, to belong, to be admired, you must play the game. And the longer you play, the harder it becomes to remember what's real. Here's the truth most people can't stand to hear: goodness is rarely pure. It's a negotiation. Every act of kindness hides a desire. Every apology hides a calculation. Even love, the most celebrated emotion, often comes with quiet conditions. Love me so I feel worthy. Need me so I feel powerful. We just learn to dress it up with poetic words so it doesn't sound ugly. But if you strip away the sugarcoating, you'll see it. The same psychology repeating across all of human history. Civilizations rise not because of virtue, but because of ambition. Empires fall not because of sin, but because of the denial of it. Humans destroy not out of malice, but out of the desperate need to protect their illusions. So what happens when a person finally sees the truth? When they recognize that their morality, their goodness, their love are all bargaining chips of the ego. At first it breaks them. The mask shatters. They feel disgusted by their own mind. But if they survive that collapse, if they don't run from what they see, something rare happens. They become awake. And awakening isn't pretty. It's not enlightenment or peace. It's the cold realization that every virtue you've ever had carries a shadow. That your compassion hides control. That your forgiveness hides pride. That your humility hides fear. You start to see how much of you has been built on lies you told yourself to stay comfortable. This awareness doesn't make you evil. It makes you free. Because once you see your own corruption clearly, you stop needing to pretend. You stop needing to prove you're good. You can finally choose your actions, not as a slave to your image, but as a master of your own mind. And that's where real morality begins. Not in the denial of darkness, but in its understanding. The moment you stop pretending to be good, you start becoming real. That's the strange paradox of the human mind. Only when you admit to your corruption do you begin to understand what integrity actually is. Because integrity isn't purity, it's awareness. It's the strength to look your darker impulses in the eye and still choose to act with control. But most people don't want that kind of honesty. It's too heavy. It's easier to keep lying, to stay in the comfort of half-truths, to blame the world for our sins instead of naming them. The mind loves escape. It builds narratives, excuses, moral frameworks, anything to avoid facing itself. That's why corruption doesn't always start with greed or ambition. It starts with fear. The fear of knowing who you really are when there's no one left to impress. Let's face it, the world doesn't reward honesty. It rewards performance. The louder you appear, the more righteous you sound, the more people believe you. That's how humanity became addicted to illusion. Every social structure, every religion, every ideology sells a version of goodness, but behind each one sits a human heart with the same trembling hunger. We preach salvation, but what we crave is recognition. We promise love, but what we demand is obedience. And when we finally get what we want, the hunger doesn't end, it grows. That's the curse of the mind. No amount of power, affection, or respect will ever satisfy it. Because what it really wants is control over reality itself. The mind wants to be God, but trapped in flesh. It becomes a desperate imitator, trying to dominate, to shape, to bend the world in its favor. That's why humans build empires and destroy them, love and betray, create and corrupt. We're all chasing a throne that doesn't exist. But here's the darker truth most never admit. The mind doesn't want peace. It wants conflict because conflict keeps it alive. When life is calm, The mind starts questioning itself, so it creates problems. It sabotages happiness. It finds enemies to blame, lovers to test, systems to rebel against. Peace feels like death to a mind addicted to chaos. And that's why we destroy what we love. Not because we hate it, but because our identity depends on struggle. Think about your own life. How many times have you ruined something good because it felt too still, too easy? How many times have you pushed someone away just to feel the thrill of pulling them back? How often do you replay your pain because peace feels unfamiliar? That's not weakness. That's programming. The human psyche is built to chase, not to rest. This is where the corruption becomes personal. The evil we fear in the world isn't hiding in palaces or prisons. It's sitting quietly inside our own reflection, disguised as fear, insecurity, pride, or desire. We all wear crowns of morality to hide the chains of self-interest. But if you tear away the crown, if you strip the performance, you find the same truth repeating. The world is not divided into good people and bad people. It's divided into those who hide from their darkness and those who face it. Facing it doesn't mean surrendering to it. It means understanding what it wants. Because your darkness isn't your enemy, it's information. It shows you what you fear, what you crave, what you secretly admire but are too ashamed to admit. When you ignore it, it controls you. When you study it, it obeys you. That's why the strongest minds in history weren't saints, they were sinners who learned discipline. They learned that morality without awareness is hypocrisy, but awareness without morality is chaos. The balance is what makes a human powerful. The ability to acknowledge both your hunger for power and your capacity for restraint, to know that you could destroy and still choose not to. The tragedy of our time is that we've confused goodness with weakness. We teach people to hide their aggression, to smother their instincts, to apologize for their strength. But the more we suppress our primal nature, the more twisted it becomes. When you deny your shadow, it doesn't die. It waits. It festers, builds pressure, and then one day it bursts through the mask. That's when a kind person becomes cruel. That's when an honest person lies. That's when a faithful person betrays. The shadow always collects its debt. So what can you do? How do you live in a world built on illusions without becoming one yourself? The answer isn't to destroy your mask. It's to wear it consciously. To know that every role you play, every emotion you express, every word you speak is part of a larger performance. Awareness doesn't mean rejecting the play. It means remembering that it's a play. Once you know you're acting, you can choose your lines. You can stop being a puppet of your hidden fears. And when you reach that level of self-understanding, something profound happens. You stop judging others so harshly. You begin to see their masks, their fears, their contradictions, not as evil, but as symptoms of being human. You stop worshipping people for their goodness and stop condemning them for their flaws. You start seeing everyone, including yourself, as a complex mixture of light and shadow, endlessly battling for balance. This realization doesn't make life easier. In fact, it makes it heavier. Because once you see the machinery behind every smile, every promise, every act of kindness, you can never unsee it. You start noticing the quiet manipulation in every conversation, the subtle control in every relationship, but with that clarity comes choice. You no longer walk blind. You move through the world with your eyes open, and that's what separates the aware from the asleep. Awareness isn't peace. It's vigilance. It's knowing that your own mind can betray you at any moment. It's learning to watch your thoughts like a guard watches a prisoner. Not to punish them, but to make sure they don't escape and take control. That's the real discipline. That's the real strength. Because the truth is, darkness never disappears. It doesn't dissolve with age or prayer or philosophy. It just changes shape. It grows subtle, patient, intelligent. It learns how to hide behind your virtues. And if you ever forget it's there, it takes the wheel again. That's why self-knowledge isn't a one-time revelation. It's a lifelong battle. The moment you stop questioning yourself, you begin to decay. So what's the lesson in all this? Don't aim to be good. Aim to be whole. A good person denies half of what they are. A whole person sees everything, the love, the hate, the pride, the fear, and learns to use each one wisely. Goodness without understanding is fragile. Wholeness without control is dangerous. But together, they create something unbreakable: clarity. When you understand your own corruption, you stop being a slave to it. You stop chasing approval. You stop fearing judgment. You stop pretending. You simply exist, aware, grounded, and quietly dangerous. Because you've made peace with what others spend their lives running from. That's the quiet power that no one teaches. The ability to stand in your own darkness without drowning in it. To look at your reflection and say, yes, there is corruption here. There is hunger. There is pride. But there is also choice. And that choice, the decision to see clearly, to act consciously, to live without illusion, is the closest thing to freedom the human mind will ever know. So, when the world tells you to hide your shadow, smile politely. Let them think you've buried it, but inside, know the truth. You haven't buried it, you've tamed it. You've looked it in the eye and said, you belong to me. Because the real danger isn't the darkness within you. The real danger is pretending it isn't there,